Just quickly, unfortunately, Das is sick this week, so we'll have to pass on the Supercoach episode 11. But make sure to follow at AFL Supercoach on Instagram. We're doing all the buy, sell, holds, and a couple of other segments that aren't mentioned. Players on the bubble, I know is mentioned here, but also Team of the Week, players who are rising in price, and some other segments. So if you want all that information, make sure to follow that account. Unfortunately, as I said, Das is a little sick, so we hope he's better by next week, and we shall return then. So we'll see you then.
January, February, March. Welcome back to Sound the Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back to another episode, the Round 10 review, and some Round 11 tips, but unfortunately we're short of a game, which we'll get to a bit later, just released, the news has been. But we'll get into the first game, which was the Tigers and the Lions.
Yes, obviously a disappointing loss for Richmond. We know they had a win last week, I think, after a couple of disappointing losses.
Yep.
But this week, they lost to Brisbane at the Gabba. I managed to tip this one. I'm not sure that many people did, but
No.
Unfortunately for Richmond fans and Richmond support and the Richmond players, they're now sitting outside of the 8. So it's a disappointing loss, but not to take anything away from Brisbane. They were incredible for most of the game. Jared Lyons, incredible again. Zorko, very good. Even Hugh McCluggage stood up once again.
Yeah, for sure. And they are coming off the back of a 73-point win the week before, and they're perpetuating their form, a 28-point win, as you said. And Dane Zorko, probably best on ground, 28 touches, 11 inside 50s. And then you mentioned Lyons, McCluggage, and they're actually playing better without Lachie Neale. Of course, Neale had a slower start to the season. I think it was still affected by injury, but when he comes back, boy, oh boy, are they going to be impressive.
Yeah, Jared Berry as well, who is another elite midfielder for Brisbane, or was very good last year. And I think both of them will be great pickups once they're healthy again.
Yeah, for sure. So, Zay, the Tigers sit in ninth position, and this week they have the Crows of the G, who came off or they beat the top side by a point. So, do you think there's any worries for them?
I think they have to be worried a little bit, given that they're not in the top 8 and probably top 4, which is where they would have liked to be coming into the season. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't be overly concerned, given that they're coming off back-to-back premierships. And one, if they don't even make it to the finals this year, you're probably still pretty happy as a Richmond fan, considering you've just won 2 grand finals. But the number 2 is that's probably not going to happen. They're going to make finals almost certainly.
Yeah.
I find it almost impossible to believe that both Sydney and GWS will finish above them come the end of the year. So I think they're still going to make finals, and I think they'll still be a good team.
Yeah, I don't think the loss had anything to do with the free kick count either. 12 free kicks less, obviously, but they lost the clearance count by 27, and they had a big loss in the inside 50 count. So great performance by the midfield of the
I do want to say I've been a little bit disappointed at Damien Hardwick in particular, but as well as a lot of the Richmond players. We know they complained about the Marvel Stadium game, which we didn't actually touch on very much. But before last week, they played 2 games at Marvel Stadium and had only played 1 game interstate. So they've had a pretty good run with it as far as the fixture is concerned. And then he complained again at halftime about the free kick count, which, as you said, I don't think it really had that much to do with the final outcome of the game. And then also, I think a lot of the Richmond players hung their heads a little bit, and their posture, not their posture, but their body language just didn't really look that good to a fan that's watching the game. I think they looked a little bit rejected and a little bit like they'd already lost the game. So I think it's unfortunate for them, but hopefully they can turn it around this week.
For sure. Now, the Blues, they had a win, but similarly to last week's Eagles performance, I think it was a win that personified just enough. It wasn't pretty, but they had their performances. Sam Walsh had 30 disposals, a huge goal. 17 of those 30 were contested, 8 intercepts, 6 tackles, and it goes on. Zach Williams returned to form, and Adam Sard off the halfback flank had 26 disposals as well.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much what you said. I think it's similar to the win we had against Essendon. So I think the Bulldogs game, we played magnificently, much better than we played against both Hawthorn and Essendon. But that's the one of the three games that we lost. So, but as a Carlton fan, it's a good thing. Like, I mean, we found a way to win ugly, which is something we haven't done for so long.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, to not play your best footy and still come out with a win is something that a lot of good teams manage to do on a regular basis. So having done that, and if we can do that a couple of more times when we're not at our best but still manage to win games, then it's going to be a good thing going into the future. But
Now,
hopefully we're at our best all the time.
yeah. Now, just before I get to the question I want to ask you, let's go to Tom Mitchell. 44 possessions. He was outstanding. I know a few of those were handballs, but still 44 possessions in any game or any form of the game is impressive. Luke Bruce, he had a couple of goals. And Blake Hardwick, who I mentioned on last week's Supercoach episode, was impressive again. But on the Blues, Lockie Plowman has suffered a 2-week suspension, which I didn't think was deserved. I mean, he went for the ball, but unfortunately knocked out, I think it was Jager O'Meara. So what's your point of view?
I think it's a little bit harsh, especially the 2-week ban. The first reason being, I think it was in play. Like he was going for the ball until it was too late to go for it, as well as Jager O'Meara. And then the second one, I don't even think there was a free kick called. I'm pretty sure that it was play on, and I'm also pretty sure I was giving Lockie Plowman praise. I was at the game, and it looked very good and looked like it was something that was going to help us score. So in the time it looked pretty good, but then when you watch the replay, it sort of looks like last second he like turned to bump, and he did unfortunately I think knock Jager O'Meara out. So
Yeah.
it's not the best. I probably 1 week I think would have been okay, but the
Yeah.
2-week ban I think is a little bit harsh, but it is what it is, I guess.
Another incident that was initially 2 weeks, but has been pegged back, is off the next game, and it was Nick Coleman's tackle on Mitch Duncan, which I thought was well deserved to be taken off because it was holding the ball and there wasn't a free kick against Coleman. It was just in the act of tackling. Unfortunately, Duncan concussed and will miss this week due to the protocols. But the Cats, they won by 34 points. A great outing for them, and their form seems to be amazing at the moment.
Yeah, just quickly on Nick Coleman's suspension, I think that was totally ridiculous that he even got suspended for
Yeah.
1 week as the original call, let alone two. I'm on a similar page to Mitch Robinson. He said something about it was a perfect tackle, which I think it was. Like
Yeah.
it was a chase down tackle. He didn't put his weight on top of him. He didn't push him in the back. He landed on the side. He left one arm open so that Mitch Duncan could brace his fall. And it's not even like he sort of slung his head into the dirt. It was, in my opinion, the perfect tackle. And it's just unfortunate that in a contact sport, even when you do everything correctly, you can still get hurt. So it was unfortunate for Mitch Duncan, but I'm very happy to see Holman getting off.
Yeah, Quinton Narkle demolished his career high as well. 34 disposals. Joel Selwood was immense. But Isaac Rankin, once again, I said it last week, I want him to return to the form. And if he doesn't play well, then it just affects the whole team's really their morality and how they feel on the day. So let's hope he gets back to form. But the next game was absolutely amazing. Clayton Oliver put the D's up by 16 points with about 7 minutes to go, and then entered Tex Walker, the captain, returning to his old prime and hitting the game winner with about 40 seconds to play.
Yeah, so I think the unfortunate thing for both Melbourne and Clayton Oliver is that such a good performance gets wasted given that they don't get the 4 points. But his performance was one of the best ones we've seen of pretty much all time, but in particular as of late. 27 contested possessions is, I think, not only a career high for Clayton Oliver, but I think an all-time record for Melbourne. And then the 3 goals, we know as of late, he's been, well, not as of late, but throughout his career, he's been labelled in a similar basket to Tom Lynch, where he's like, he handballs too much, but he had 38 disposals and 20 goals, 20 handballs, 20 kicks, sorry. But the thing that I found in particular that was really good about his game was the 3 goals that he did kick. So throughout his career, he hasn't been one of those midfielders that really does get forward and kick goals like a Bontempelli or a Dustin Martin, but he managed to damage Adelaide not only in the clearances but on the scoreboard as well.
Yeah, Rory Laird 35 touches, Paul Seedsman 35 touches, and Ben Keys 34. But It was great to see the Crows weren't flustered by the big lead, and they managed to kick 3 goals in the last 7.5 minutes, as I just mentioned. But a great effort by them. And for the D's, Clayton Oliver should get some Brownlow votes, even though they did lose by a point. But their middle is very, very ominous. The Saturday night game, or the first of two, I think we'll go with the Fremantle Sydney one first, just because we'll touch on the other Saturday game just after it. But another close game at Optus Stadium.
Yeah, so this is another game that I managed to tip in my footy tipping that I think almost no one did. So
Yeah, you
um,
said this last week too.
yeah, I was saying I don't really rate Sydney as much as a lot of other people do, and I don't think they're going to play finals this year, despite currently sitting in the 8. And this one would have put them, I think, maybe even so they'd be percentage out of the top 4. So
Yeah,
it would have been a big win for them, but unfortunately for their fans, they lost. And I think next week for them is going to be a big game against Carlton. If they lose that one, I think they could slip out of the 8. Yeah, so they could slip out of the 8 next week for
yeah,
Richmond and Fremantle. So yeah, I don't think they didn't perform that bad, but I think throughout the year they've just performed so much better than a lot of people expected, that their expectations coming into this game were a lot higher than I think they perhaps should have been. But a lot of their players were really good again. Callum Mills, outstanding. Josh Kennedy, Lance Franklin, who kicked 6,
yeah,
second bag of 5 this year. So a lot of the people that were calling him washed have a little bit of egg on their face. So,
yeah.
but outstanding win for Fremantle. Rory Lobb with his 4 goals, massive, as well as a lot of their starters, Walters and Fife, outstanding again.
Yeah, a couple of positives, as you said. Buddy Franklin, I did some research. Before this game, he averaged 8 goals a game at this venue, and he topped it off, or he capped it off with another 6 goals and 1 point. So he loves the venue. Jordan Dawson also 31 possessions. But the Dockers, a big come from behind win, and it was a seesawing match. It was back and forth constantly. Nat Fife had 13 clearances, and the Dockers did well to get the win. And I believe they are just behind the Tigers, sitting in 10th spot, and another winnable game this week. So now we'll go to the game that I was at, and I'm somehow wearing the jumper, but get stuck into us, Dave.
I think you should go first. I want to hear what you have to say, given that you're a St Kilda fan and you had a horrible, horrible loss to the top team in the league at the moment, the Western Bulldogs.
I don't really know what to say, to be honest. I mean, the Bulldogs were just unstoppable. They were relentless. You'd think if you're up 70 odd at half or 3/4 time, they're going to slow down, but they weren't. They were constantly attacking, and 111 points, which was their third win by more than 10 goals this season. But Bontempelli, Liberatore, Bailey Dale, he was absolutely unbelievable from the start of the match. So, look, for the Saints, not many positives. I mean, I guess you could say that there's not really much you can say, Zave. We'll have to be harsh on our selection. I think Brett Ratton will have to be, but I still think he's a good coach. But some work to do, and maybe the installment of some older players came back to bite us.
Um, I don't want to say I'm too harsh, but it was a horrible, horrible performance.
Yeah.
And I think St Kilda will not play finals this year. They do have 4 wins, but they are third last on the ladder with the second worst percentage in the league. And the reality is, after they've been pumped so many times this year, they're going to have to win one more game than 9th in order to make the 8, because they're just simply not going to recover the 30% that they've already lost, unless they beat a couple of teams by 100 points. But I don't think that's going to happen. And they've just been so disappointing in so many games this year. And
Yeah.
I know as a St Kilda fan, it must really hurt. I'm a Carlton fan. I've lived
I
through
haven't been to a win yet.
yeah, I'm a Carlton fan. I've been through similar things, but yeah, it's really, really disappointing. And I honestly can't see how they're going to come back. They've got the same amount of wins as Carlton, but their percentage is 20% worse. They've got the same amount as Essendon. They're a win behind Richmond. They're not going to catch them. A win behind GWS and 2 behind Sydney. So
Yeah.
I don't really see them making the finals anymore, unfortunately.
Well, apart from the stat sheet where it says that we allowed 69 inside 50s, it wasn't really that terrible. I mean, we lost the clearances by 13, which is bad, but not awful. But our inside 50s were dreadful. We had no target that we were looking for. Max King was always up the ground. Tim Mebbury can probably hold his head up. He was about one of the only ones that gave some effort apart from Jack Steele and Jack Sinclair, but certainly a lot to analyse, and let's hope they can bounce back against North this week, which I think is probably a blessing to come
Yeah.
up against the 18th, but you never know with North.
Yeah, if you do lose that game, I think you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. The Sunday game, it was the Giants by 16. I unfortunately didn't manage to catch much of this game, but the Giants, a great win for them on their home ground.
Yeah, I've been tipping upsets. I didn't tip this one, but my father did, and I think this is a massive win for GWS. Given that they were sitting around that top 8 mark, and they're now sitting in the 8th position. But
Yeah.
to beat a top 8 team and a team that West Coast, if they had won this, they'd be sitting in the top 4. So it's not like they didn't have anything to play for. But GWS, they were just better, I think, most of the game. If you look at the top-ranked players as far as Dream Team is concerned, it went Whitfield, Green, Taranto, Kelly, Ward, Hopper, Taylor, Lloyd. So the top 8 players were all GWS. So
Yeah.
they dominated the stats, they dominated the ball, so they were just better.
Yeah, for sure. And West Coast seem to have some struggles away from home, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's been said a lot over the last few years. We know they've lost the grand final at the MCG, and they've struggled in Melbourne, just period. But I think that noise was quietened a little bit after Dom Sheed's goal and their comeback victory over Collingwood. So I don't think their struggles are that big, and I honestly think they're still definitely contenders this year.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the game in the middle of the day, it was close and it was a rivalry, all right, but Collingwood only lost by a point to the Power, and there was a lot of animosity between the two teams, and particularly in the crowd. I saw some Port fans wearing their controversial prison bar jumper, but no, Collingwood, they gave a valiant effort, I thought.
Yeah, I think the number one takeaway from this game was Dane Swan's tweet. At the end of the first quarter, he tweeted something out about, I just want to know from my friends in South Australia, is 1 point in a whole quarter of football good? Given that they only scored 1 point. But then at the end of the game, after Port Adelaide won by 1, they retweeted it and said it was a handy point. So I think that was a really good comeback, and I got a good little giggle out of that. But yeah, this was a low-scoring game, but a good one nonetheless. And I think Brodie Grundy, again, is going to have to get votes despite a losing effort.
Yeah, Kane Farrell, 550 metres gained. He played his best game of his short career, well, so far, and he's very young and a lot of potential for that Power side. Alir, a great addition. He's been consistent all year. You know what you're going to get from Travis Boak and Ollie Wines and Robbie Gray, but a well-rounded effort. I know it was close, but it was good to see their forward line like Georgiades. He took some huge marks in the last quarter, I believe it was. So great performance by the Power. Probably a little closer than it should have been.
Yeah, I know I might be getting told off for linking it back to Carlton, but I was talking during the Carlton segment that about winning ugly and how good teams manage to do that on a regular basis. And I think that's exactly what happened here again for Port Adelaide. Like they weren't the better team. Collingwood was much better throughout a lot of the game, but Port scrapped and they struggled, but they managed to pull out a win. So I think that's what good teams do, and that's exactly what I was talking about.
Darcy Moore needs to stay a backman. 15 marks, 25 touches, held Dixon to 1 goal. So great performance by him. And Bo McCreary, 3 goals, 1, which was also good for them. The final game of the round, it was a complete performance by the Bombers, who were winners by 72 points.
Yeah, I think a couple of the players that need to get mentions is Darcy Parish. I think he's currently second or third in the Brownlow predictor. He's up there in the coaching votes as well. So he's been incredible this year, and I think it's a step that a lot of people didn't really see coming. Zach Merritt was once again good for them.
And Fox too, the young rookie.
Yeah, I think Essendon, again, they just destroyed a team that isn't as good as them. They were far superior on the day and this year so far. So unfortunately for North Melbourne, they can't keep their winning streak up and lost to Essendon.
Yeah, we underestimated them at the start of the year for sure. the Bombers, and their rebuild is probably the smoothest rebuild in the AFL at the moment. You wouldn't think they'd be winning games, but they beat St Kilda by 75 points. They beat North. They've lost, I think, 3 games by within a goal. So they're fighting hard, and they've got great young players, like you said, Parrish, the midfield's there, Merritt. They're not even playing with Dylan Shield or Jai Caldwell yet, and they're still winning by 12 goals on the day. So great effort by them. And at this game, we'll move to some other news because... Oh, did you want to say something first? I'll let you go.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
So there was contact tracing at this game and the other game, Collingwood Port Adelaide, and we've heard some news that Hawthorn versus Gold Coast will be postponed.
I didn't actually hear that, but that's massive news. So
Yeah.
I guess both teams are going to be a game behind in their schedule, and the AFL is going to have to find a spot to I guess play that game somewhere at some time.
So I'll just update you. Hawthorn and Gold Coast will have their bye this week.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's perfect then.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means for Supercoach. That might be a different question.
Yeah. Well, I'll trade CJ out, I think.
Yeah. Although it might be, I know this isn't a Supercoach episode. It might be good if you've got like a Tom Mitchell that you can play through all 3 bye rounds.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so tough. It's unprecedented times. I don't really know what to say, to be honest. But I don't know.
We'll hide the Supercoach talk for the next episode, which we'll get to shortly, and we'll go to the tips. So the Bulldogs and the Demons at Marvel Stadium with an open roof this week.
I think I'm going to have to take the Bulldogs. They were really good last week, and Melbourne unfortunately lost. So I think continuing that form.
The Pies and the Cats at the G.
I'm going to take the Cats, despite the Pies being good last week.
Yep, so will I. The Lions and the Giants at the Gabba.
I'm taking Brisbane. Ultra impressive over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So definitely picking them.
Yeah, nothing to dispute. Yeah, I'll go Brisbane as well. St Kilda North at Marvel.
You might not like to hear it, but sounds like a spoon bowl. I'm going to have to take St Kilda despite their really poor performance last week.
Yeah, I will too. Gold Coast Hawthorn is postponed, and the only night game will be the Eagles and the Bombers at Optus Stadium.
I'm going to take the Eagles. It's at home. We know how good they are at home. And I just think they're better. So.
If this was at Marvel Stadium, I'd almost take the Bombers, to be honest, after the Eagles' performance last week.
I don't think I'd go quite that far, but...
No?
Nah.
I still can beat them at Marvel.
I really rate the West Coast team. I think they've got a lot of talent from forward line to back line, midfield as well. So I still have to take them.
Someone who went unmentioned as well, Jack Redden. He's been impressive. The Tigers and the Crows at the G on the Sunday.
Take the Tigers in what is shaping up to be a little bit of a must-win for them.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of pressure surrounding them. And the Swans versus the Blues at the SCG.
I think this is a massive game for both teams.
Yeah,
I've put it in my finals calculator, and this game is actually a swing one. So, as if I've tipped every single game for the whole year, and if Carlton win this game, according to my predictions, they finish 8th on the ladder. But if Sydney win it, they finish 8th. So I think it's a massive game, and I'm going to have to tip Carlton, but I think it's really, really close.
I think I'll go Sydney at the SCG, but that's a tough game. I'd say a lot of these are probably obvious tips, with the exception of maybe the Bulldogs D's. But this game is very, very close, and it will be a good game. The Power versus the Dog. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I think because both teams are young, that they're both really, really inconsistent, and the difference between their best and worst football is really, really big. So I think every week it's difficult to tip, and given that they're going up against each other, it's even harder.
Mm-hmm. Like you did last week, I'll say Sydney, but I might tip Carlton in the footy tips competition. The final game of the round is Port Adelaide versus Fremantle at Adelaide Oval.
I think it's another pretty easy one, and I'm going to go with Port.
I think I said that this was a winnable game for Freo, but I thought it was at Optus Stadium, so I'll go Port Adelaide. Sorry, Freo fans, for any of you watching. Anything else you want to mention, Xavier?
I think I might mention that there's probably no Freo fans watching this. there
Yeah.
aren't many of them, period.
I'll agree with you there. That's all for this episode. We hope you enjoy. Follow at sts.podcast, at AFL Supercoach, and at Footy Beanies on Instagram. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time.